In this video, I'm going to be talking a little bit about personality research and how that can impact well-being. But I'm going to give you more of a direct view of personality research and a direct perspective regarding personality research. It's a little bit different from uh, wellness and not directly related to well-being and the topics of well-being and the psychology, say, of well-being would look at. But they do overlap a lot. This is more evident in disciplines like positive psychology that have aspects of situated psychology as well as personality in particular, in terms of explaining human behavior and what allows us to live more meaningful, fulfilling lives, and particularly respond to questions regarding what is the good life and how can we live better lives. And in personality, most personality research involves four types of levels of research, and they all have different levels of validity to them and reliability that we can draw from. Some are a little bit more reliable than others, but in some ways, you'll find that each of them tend to provide something of significant value where the other one might be lacking. And so the four main research uh, dimensions and levels of analysis that we look at tend to be self-report, which are you might be most familiar with, taking a survey or responding to questions directly. Self-report tends to typically be done in survey formats, but when we see them done in interviews, that's when we can start to actually see some of the other methods come in. But it's focused more on the reporting of the individual and how an individual responds. Well, there are also, say, interviews in which a self-report can be conducted, and this has to do with the behavioral dimension of personality research, in which we're observing behaviors directly and characteristics of individuals in which we might be interested in studying particular personality characteristics or traits, or studying them often in clinical cases. And behavioral research is often done in collaboration with aspects of self-report, such as if you think of an interview or particularly a semi structured interview in which there might be some planned, say, survey style questions in advance, but then also some free flowing questions that might come from the experience of a therapist who's trained in asking these questions and has a large body of philosophical and scientific knowledge as well as psychological knowledge to support that and their direct perceptual experience within that discipline, a cumulative experience from their time as a student, maybe even just a beginner novice, as well as direct, say, work experience or educational experience, and even volunteer experience with those topics in that general practice, and even sometimes special individuals or groups. So that has that direct observation that you'll see as forming that more free flowing style of the interview is going to be more associated with the behavioral aspects of research. And then there's also what's called often collateral reporting. And this might involve a little bit of both aspects of, say, the behavioral observation that's direct, but it's going to be less rigorous and not as scientifically based because it tends to be broader and it, say, could come from like a manager or somebody who's supervising you who might not know you as well, or might not have the a deeper scientific or psychological basis to pinpoint particular behaviors that are being observed or patterns of expression associated with behavior that can give us insight into various perceptions, motivations, emotions, feelings, actions, and behaviors regarding various personality characteristics. And so collateral reporting, or you could think of it as collaborative reporting, because it's not so much that it's never really done to it's always done in support of other research, and it's used to increase the statistical validity and reliability of a finding through having multiple points of data that reduce bias, through having two individuals reporting on a common topic or area being asked of by a researcher investigating, say, personality traits or other aspects of human behavior and psychology regarding often one individual. And so collaborative reporting will have aspects of self-report in which another person who might know this individual or who might not, might be a stranger to this individual, is asked to make judgments or report on behalf of another individual rather than themselves. And that reporting is aggregated with maybe other reports from a researcher's direct observations or other self-report data that might come directly from the individual, and that can give us a more reliable understanding of various personality characteristics, or help us to understand how another person thinks about an individual or various personality characteristics. So a little bit more to do, not so much with direct personality, but perception and perspective. And then there's the last dimension, which has to do with life records or records, behavioral records, and data that can come in the form of photographs or often medical records, educational records, achievements, publications, personal strivings or personal works, various forms of behavior that are forms, say notes, things that can leave, say, evidence behind, in which can show us a history of a person's behavior and perceptual, motivational, emotional, feeling, action-based processes, as well as their direct perceptual processes, and allow us to tap into what they might be thinking or the ideas that they might have. And together, these various types of dimensions of research help us to better understand the self as an individual. And where wellness might come into personality is when we're trying to figure out what are we going to do with all this personality research, or how is personality research, why does it matter for me as an individual? Why is it important for me? And oftentimes personality research, its biggest impact has to do with cultivating greater self-intelligence, and in particular, becoming more mature and having greater self-regulatory skills that allow us to lead more self-actualizing and fulfilling lives, and to recognize not only our unique personality characteristics, but also the other individual characteristics that characterize others, and give us a greater appreciation for individuality and these individual differences that can help us to really develop insight into our own relationships with ourselves and relationships with others, as well as our own unique behaviors, and develop greater self-awareness alongside this that can lead to meaningful, long-lasting behavior change and developments that are connected to the individuals that we want to be, not just who we are, but who we might want to be. And also to work on aspects of ourselves, but also sustain and really proliferate and take almost a daily recognition into the good qualities of ourselves that we can pivot and capitalize on during the more rough patches and the difficult patches, and when we might be thinking that I'm so bad at that, so bad at spelling, for example. That's something that I don't always do so well. But then I can think of like all these other ways in which I'm actually pretty good at language, and so that's not so bad that in one area I'm not so good, because I'm proficient and I have all these quirks in other areas of language. So having a good understanding of your own abilities and capabilities often comes through a multi-level understanding of personality and how various perceptions, motivations, emotions, feelings, actions, and behaviors interact within the self, but also within the self regarding various situations and these situated contexts in which we can start to understand the context in which personality change is going to occur. And when we draw from personality, insights from personality research and how personality research is done, we can start to develop an understanding of how we might start ourselves to go about exploring our own personality. Now we might approach that differently, and I wouldn't recommend you to go, say, be a researcher, but being a researcher or imitating a researcher is very, very, very helpful in terms of understanding personality, because the way personality assessment gets done and the way personality research gets done are very closely aligned, but they're also distinct too. So you don't want to have your own biased judgments into yourself per se, but being aware of those biases can be very useful for understanding the nature of the questions that you're being asked and that you've responded to, and having an understanding of responses to, say, personality questions um, after you've taken a personality test can really help to develop insight through that scientific rigor, through the underlying philosophy and psychology uh, within a reliable personality test. Not all personality tests are reliable, but if you're looking for a reliable personality test, just to put this in there, you can take the Hexaco personality test or the Big Five personality test, which you can find quite easily online. They're quite readily available. Just do a Google search of Hexaco model personality test or a Big Five, and typically you want to look for something that has a 5 point or a 7 point scale because they're a little bit less biased, and that will break down the 6 dimensions or the 5 dimensions into 2 or 4 facets, sometimes 6 facets, because they tend to be a little bit more elaborative and rigorous when they're done. And they also tend to be between 10, 50 to 100 questions in length. You can take a 10 question test, but just mind you that a 50 question or a 100 question test are going to be a little bit more reliable because of the questions that are being asked are going to be aggregated. So they're going to be combined to be able to assess your personality score. So a 10 question of 10 or 12 personality questions might only measure a few of the personality dimensions, and if they're measuring all personality dimensions, chances are they're going to be maybe they're going to be spread out. So they're going to be less reliable than if you had a 50 question or a 100 question personality uh, uh, inventory. And from there, you can read the descriptions of what each personality trait means, and also when you're asked the question, you'll be able to get an understanding more or less of what might be being asked in regards to various personality characteristics and what they're like, what they are, the various defining features and elements of them. But when you're conducting your own personality research, you might want to look more broadly and look at direct studies, or also reflect. So this is where there's going to be a little bit different from conducting personality psychology research and then also conducting research into your own personality. This would require much more of. Often, I would recommend it's better to probably write this down, but asking questions regarding the self, what you find meaningful, where your attention moves towards, what your strengths are, what your vocations are, also your negative qualities, or what your mood is regularly, and when do you experience positive emotions and when do you experience negative emotions. There's also what are you drawn towards, what are your hobbies or what are your pastimes, and do you have any niches or habits that you do that you either like or don't like, good habits or positive habits? And getting a big picture understanding of all these and compiling them will allow you to have a broad understanding of various personality characteristics. And the characteristics that tend to occur with higher frequency across higher or more situations tend to be more characteristic of our core personalities. And when we combine this with information from personality psychology and personality science, which brings in elements from evolutionary science as well as biological science, psychology and neuroscience, and to some degree sociology, but less so. It's more primarily the mind sciences and that are focused on psychophysiology rather than the sociological functions that personality research is mostly conducted in. These can all help to really contextualize your personality, your responses, by providing greater detail to them. So that's just an overview of how personality research can be very meaningful and valuable in terms of influencing our understandings of ourselves as related to positive well-being. Hope you enjoyed the video.